difference in a temptation and a trial. But when James is talking here, he's talking about endure these tests, or when you encounter various trials, know that the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And so you begin to see that there's joy in the testing. Proves that to have joy in that testing, it proves what? It proves that you and I belong to God. Because if someone else is enduring something, or they're facing a test, how do people in the world handle a test or a trial? We just talked about a little bit. Like when you see somebody who says, you know what, we're going through it, or we're having to deal with this, like they're searching for answers, but they're also trying to do things on their own. They're usually real grumpy or bent completely out of shape and just not happy with life and frustrated with how things are going. And what God is saying here is, or James is saying, listen, you know, be different than that. We talked about last week how James's life was transformed completely from who he used to be to who he is now writing this book, and we looked at his martyrdom. But in part of that change is, well, you know, here's how the world would handle this test or this trial, but as a believer, here's how I'm to count it. He's encouraging believers, be different. Be different than the rest of the world. Face a trial, not running from it, not tucking tail and running from it or anything like that and being scared of it. Face it head on and count it all joy, or consider it joy when you encounter those things. And let that joy drive you through it and prove to other people, listen, I belong to God. And when you go back and you think about it in the Old Testament or the New Testament as well, think of some people that face trials or tests in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament figure, who's some people that come into your mind? Job. Job's probably the perfect example. I know that's the easiest one to think about. I mean, I know Brother Bob preached through the book of Job and preached through it for a long time, so you heard everything that happened to Job. And you think about all of that, and in all of that, and we looked back not too long ago at Job chapter 19, how Job talked about all these things can happen, but I know that my Redeemer lives, and I look forward to meeting my Redeemer. He was counting it joy no matter what happened to him. You know, he lost family, lost possessions, lost everything except for his wife, who wasn't necessarily encouraging to him, and his 3 friends, who didn't necessarily bring the most encouragement either. But everything else he lost, and he counted all joy. All right, think about Joseph. What happened with Joseph? He was thrown into a well. Then what? Sold into slavery. Then what happened when he got to Egypt? He was attacked by Potiphar's wife, accused of trying to rape Potiphar's wife, put back in jail. But yet what happened in all those things as a result of Job being faithful and enduring all those things that God was testing him with, what was the result of it? Right. So, so you see how God works these things in people's lives. And you can go and you can look at Daniel, you can look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you can look at Peter, you can look at Paul, like we said, Job. You can even look at Noah building the ark, you know. All the things that they endured and the things that they were tested with, their faith was tested. You know, look at Abraham, as Brother Jim preached on Sunday morning. His faith was tested in the fact he had to step out on faith and go wherever God sent him to go, not knowing exactly where it was. And so all those things are examples of counting it in joy. But then in verses 3 and 4, you see the result of counting it all joy. Like when you consider it all joy, when you face these trials and these tests that you go through and you endure them, then there's a result of you being obedient and enduring those things. And as we talked about, testing reveals genuine faith. And as it produces endurance. And I know, like some of you know, that we train to run a marathon, and almost I thought I was going to die at one point, you know. But you know, if you don't train for those endurance type things, like if I had just showed up on race day without running, without preparing in any shape or fashion, like if I didn't drink water or anything while I was running, I'm not going to make it very far. You know, I'm not going to. I have not a whole lot of endurance as it is, and kind of move at a snail's pace. But you know, if I don't train myself or prepare myself or when I'm being tested, you know, I don't show what I've prepared for. I can't think of the words I'm trying to say. Like if you take a test and you haven't studied for that test, your results are going to show how much effort you put into it. Just like a test will show where our faith truly lies. That's what I'm trying to. That's the message I guess I'm trying to get across. But you know, you think about that. Like as you face a test, it shows the world exactly where your faith is. Like you can tell somebody all day long, I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. You know, I do this, I do that, I do all these things. But I guess where it really comes into play is when you face something and they see how you handle that situation. They see how you endure that test that comes along in your life. Because things aren't always going to be perfect. And for them, they really are examining you. They may not say anything to you, but I promise you they're watching you to see how you handle it. Because you tell them you're different. Now they want to see exactly how you're different. And so if you're obedient and you endure those things, it'll reveal your faith. And then you see that the perfect results that James begins to talk about is, it says, let endurance have its perfect result so that you may be perfect and complete. So what begins to happen when you endure the test and when you endure the trial? You know what happens when you consider a test, Joy? What does it say? It has what kind of result? It has a perfect result. Now, perfect, do you think that means without blemish, or what's he going for here? What? It's not that you're not, it's not perfect as in like there's no blemish, there's no wrong. What he's saying here in perfect is that it's complete. Like it rounds out, it completes. Just like if I can use basketball as an analogy. I'm sorry if you're not a sports person. But in basketball, like if you want someone who's a complete player or has a complete game, like they're able to dribble, they're able to pass, they're able to shoot, and they play good defense. Like he has a well-rounded game is what somebody would say. Like a scout would evaluate and say, hey, he's lacking in this area. He doesn't have, this ability. Or, when you think about, especially with the football draft coming up, they evaluate people's different abilities and stuff like that. And what James is saying here is, if when you begin to endure these things and you're obedient and it reveals your genuine faith, it yields perfect results. It yields complete results. It rounds you out as a believer. Like it fills in the gaps of the things that you're lacking. It's God using that test to fill in a gap in your life of a need that you have, or a flaw. I guess a flaw would be a better word to say. A flaw that you have, something that God sees that He needs to put into your life so that He can use you down the road. Does that kind of make sense? Like when you see people that have endured tests, like if you endure something, I'll use Miss Barbara as an example. Y'all know Miss Barbara, that's Christian's mom, that's our secretary, who essentially runs the youth department sometimes, mostly all the time. Miss Barbara had breast cancer probably how long ago, Christian, when she found out? 2-3 years ago? Really? Okay, a while back. Longer than I thought. It was right. I knew it was close to when I started working here. Yeah, that's right, because our first email, she wasn't here and Brad wasn't here. She found out that she had breast cancer. Well, since that time, and I remember praying with Miss Barbara, we as a staff prayed with her, and I know she walked through that, trusting God through that. Well, as a result of her going through that, God's opened the door of what He used to teach her in that time for her to be able to minister to other ladies who are going through similar things, or not. If it's not even breast cancer, it's something in their life where they're struggling. I know that I've seen her personally use that. So anytime God takes you through something or presents a test or a trial in your life, don't just overlook it. Don't rush through it. Don't fall into the temptation to try to solve it or to fix it on your own. But allow God to use that time to teach you, hey, listen, here's what I want to work on. Here's what you need to work on. Here's what I'm trying to teach you in your life. And let Him create that perfect result. Let that endurance, that patience and endurance that you have to go through that test or that trial, let that shape you into who God's trying to shape you into. Don't try to rush through it and try to figure it out on your own. Let Him work on you and show you, hey, listen, here's what I need in you, because here's what I'm going to do with you down the road. And the temptation, it becomes a temptation when you and I look at it as, how do I get out of the situation and what's the easiest fix for it? There's a lot of times in ministry, like where you can look at a problem and you can see, all right, we got this problem. I know I need to pray about it. And the temptation is, while I'm praying about it, try to find some backup plan, some solution that I know, well, if God doesn't come through, I've got this backup plan. And that's when it becomes a temptation to try to think, all right, well, I'll wait on God up until this point, or I'll wait on God to do something up until this point. But as we go on, and you'll see, it'll be a while before we get there, but when you read over in the book, the last chapter or two of James, it talks about you have not because you